How are y'all doing? All right, so I'm a cartoonist, mostly for The New Yorker. I am going to talk to you about creativity, but first, let's look at some cartoons. This is Shay wearing a Bart shirt. I think he would. Here's another one. The guy on the phone is saying, "I'm trapped in an elevator. Wait, it gets worse." Buck's trucking, safety third. Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, no soliciting. I know how you feel. Here's a couple of police dogs talking, one of them saying, "I'm starting to really like the smell of cocaine." Seems like that would happen, right? This is face painting, $5. You gotta pay attention to the details in that one. This is the Vesperados. Should we sing it? No. I'm from the South, so this one tickles me. This is a breakup cartoon, if there's such a thing. The woman is saying, "I hope we can still be cousins." Okay, let's get into this. So, you guys are laughing a little too hard at that. Most people, when they think of cartoons, they think of the drawing part. I just wanted to say right off the bat that that's just a tiny part. That's just the ending. That's like the end zone dance of cartooning. The real work is in the field, and it's about ideas, coming up with ideas. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Great ideas and how to have them. Came up with that myself. All right, so it's going to be in two parts. The first part's going to be really practical, and the second part's going to be kind of philosophical. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I do. Every day I get up in the morning. That's the first thing. Important step, don't forget. And then I make coffee. I take a full pot of coffee. Thank you. And I take an empty sheet of paper. Anybody? Empty sheet of paper? No? I empty the pot of coffee, and I fill the sheet of paper. Next point. No. That's generally what I do. At the end of the day, I've got a sheet of, well, I guess it's not the end of the day. It takes about 2 hours. Depends how fast I'm thinking and how fast I'm drinking. Anyway, I do that every day. At the end of the week, I need 10 ideas to pitch to The New Yorker. So I just look through all these sheets and I pick the 10 best ones. Those are the ones I draw. Now in those 10, 2 of them are going to be really good. Just saying. 2 of them are going to be kind of bad. Also just saying. And then the 6 in the middle are going to be fine. They're going to be good, solid cartoons. That's what I do. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what about the great ones? Well, we'll get to that. Just hang on. I'm going to go into more detail on what I do to get those ideas first. I do 5 things. I add, subtract, switch, invert, and mash up. I've got 2 things I can work with, the picture and the caption. So I can apply tweaks to both of them to give me new opportunities. So I'm going to give you examples of how I've used these techniques. So adding, it's a mugger saying, "Give me the purse and the matching pumps." Took a phrase you'd expect him to say, and I just added a few words, and now he's a fashion-conscious mugger. All right, subtracting, sort of an interview situation. The boss is saying, "So, Jim, where do you see yourself in 10 minutes? So I subtracted on a conceptual level time. Switching things. Instead of a hook for a hand, he's got a spatula, which leads to this line. He's saying, "I was in a different place then." And then invert. That's really just a switch, but you're taking the exact opposite of a concept or an idea. So it's a dad burying the dog with the son, and he's saying, "Yeah, sure, unless, of course, he's in doggy hell," which is the opposite. Last, or I think the last is mashup. Leon's Auto Salvage and Center for Interpretive Dance. 2 things mashed together to make a new idea. Okay, so now we're going to talk about great ideas. I'm going to go so bold as to claim this is a great idea before I show it to you. So those are the 5 things again. Here is the one I think is a great idea. It's a couple of pigeons up on a ledge. I can feel you guys getting judgmental already. Let's see if it holds up. So one of the pigeons is talking. He's saying, I'd say my biggest influence is probably Pollock. No? Too critical now. This is, maybe it's just a great idea to me, but it's a great Diffee cartoon because I like my cartoons to be like me. A little bit dumb and a little bit smart at the same time. So that's what I would consider one of my great ideas. Now I'm going to, remember how I showed you, I told you how I make the coffee and I filled a full sheet of paper? I actually tracked down the sheet of paper from the day that I came up with this. It was probably 8 years ago. Anyway, this is this sheet of ideas, and I've gone back and annotated a bunch of points, and I don't have time to talk about all of them, but let me zoom in on the top half. Let me just show you. I've got a laser pointer here. So at the very beginning, I just start writing things. Tackle box, for some reason, came to my mind. And then I started working off of it, like tackle as in football, and then boxing, tackle boxing. That's nothing. Then I wrote fear of flying, just a concept. I never really worked on it anymore, kept working. Wiffle. There's a blank there where bat would be, I guess. Wiffle ball, wiffle bat. What else could be wiffle? Never did much with that. Anyway, I went all through here. I don't know. This one's kind of funny. A penny saved is a penny who has accepted Jesus as his personal savior. But I didn't. I should have drawn that one. I didn't draw that one. Well, that's one idea for this week, I guess. So this is the second half. This is the end of the page I wanted to talk about, because right over here is the beginnings of that pigeon Pollock joke. So right here I wrote, this is the first thing I wrote, it says pigeons on a wire. Pretty basic setup. And then I had these terrible jokes, which I'll share in public. Here it is. Can you feel the electricity? See? Next one is we met online. I wrote those down. Up here I added something. I said, pigeons on a wire looking into a window at a bird in a cage. That could do something. I never came up with anything, but that could still. But this is where it starts getting interesting. I wrote target practice. I always go scatological eventually. So then I had it as a bomb, and then I said, oh, as an artist, right now I'm working on a bus, sort of an homage to Pollock. That's a wordy version of what I ended up with, which was this. I'd say my biggest influence is probably Pollock. I realized I didn't need to put the bus in there. I could just make it visual, making them up high above a city street where there could be buses and humans, all kinds of targets. And yeah, it's about splattering pigeon poop. So, let's get philosophical if we could. I have two things I want to leave you with. These are things that I've learned over the course of doing this for 13 years, and they're things I really wish I'd known at the beginning. So, there's 2 points, and each one has a little story. The first one is a story coming from Texas. It says, welcome to Texas, last vegan pizza for 773 miles, which is actually the width of Texas. So down in Texas, in Austin, at the University of Texas, the McCombs School of Business, there's 3 professors. Their names are Katchelmeyer, Reichert, and Williamson. And they've been doing some amazing work on how to incentivize creativity in the corporate world. And I was really excited when I found this study that I did, because it dovetails completely with what I had experienced in my own creative life. So this is what they did, and I'll have to summarize it really quickly. They took 2 groups. First group, they said, hey, we're going to pay you for all your great ideas. They had a way of measuring, standard way of measuring creativity in this idea. The most innovative ideas, we're going to pay you for those. The second group, they said, you know what, we're going to pay you for every idea you come up with. Good, bad, terrible, whatever you come up with, you're getting paid for it. Now, not surprisingly, the second group came up with a lot more ideas. They came up with a lot of terrible ideas, because it didn't matter. They're like, yeah, a hat made of potatoes, sure. But what is interesting is they actually came up with a few more creative ideas, or great ideas, ideas that were judged to be highly creative. They came up with more. Now, why is that? This is the principle that I've learned doing this, and it dovetails with this. Quantity over quality. It's true. It's more important to come up with a bunch of stuff so that some of it has a chance of being great. I would even go so far as to say that going for great ideas is not a great idea. Because it paralyzes you. It frustrates you. You're so focused on, I've got to get a great idea, that you're not even getting the good ones that come to you. And you're definitely not writing down the bad ones, like I did. Because sometimes the bad ones lead you into the good ones. What's that? Yeah. All right, so that's the first principle. It's true. It's science. Quantity over quality. Second one comes from a story on a remote Scottish island. Night after night, she watches the sea, longing for her husband's departure. So this story has to do with this guy standing over there drawing. That's Jack. Say hello to Jack. And if you look at him, you can tell he knows when I mention a remote Scottish island what story I'm going to tell. And he's probably not happy about it. This is the story. He and I took a trip to Scotland 15, I don't know how many years ago, lots of years ago. We took a trip to Scotland. We were backpacking around and we were painting landscape paintings. And at the end, we wound up on an island called Rossi, which is in the Inner Hebrides between the Isle of Skye and the mainland. And it's just what you imagine, you know, windswept moors and, you know, rocky croft buildings. And they have a population. It's not a big population, but they're all down on one end of the island. And the other end is wild and remote. Lots of sheep and very little else. So Jack and I were hiking around, and we were convinced for days that someone was calling our name. It was like, Matt, Jack. And I'm embarrassed to say that it took us more than one day to figure that out. That's the kind of genius we're talking about here. The last day of our trip, we got to the cliffside, and we were painting, you know, the ocean and the rocks, just a beautiful setting. And the cliffs go down, you know, like rocks and then a little grass and rocks and grass, hundreds of feet down to the ocean. And I was at the top, and Jack had wandered down, and he was down over here. And it was really windy. Wind is always coming in off the ocean, but today it was really windy. You know, you could do that leaning thing. And Jack had this orange windbreaker that he put up, and he fastened it really tight. So all I could see was like his back and the back of his orange hooded head. He was looking that direction. I'm painting along. And I look down in the water, and I see a school of dolphins jumping up out of the water, and, you know, you could see them through the water. It was really an amazing sight. And so I was, Jack, trying to get his attention to point to him. Jack! And I'm yelling. He's, you know, 150 feet away, plus the wind, plus his hood. He can't hear me. So I'm like, I gotta get something. There's no sticks because there's no trees. But what they do have is lots of piles of sheep. Evidence. So I reach in, I grab like a nice clump off the top. It's nice and dry from the sun, and I try to throw it to him. But it's like throwing a piece of styrofoam into a wind tunnel. It's just... So I go back to the pile, and I go a little deeper. Some of you country folk know what I'm talking about. Something with a little bit of heft to it. And I know now that the wind is blowing, so I can't just throw it at him. I've got to kind of aim it. So I'm judging the wind, and I just hurl it as hard as I can, and it goes up there. You know, it's soaring over the crystal blue sea, and the wind starts to hit it, curves a little bit, and then the gravity starts to curve it. It's going down, and about at this point, I'm thinking, that turd's got a chance. And sure enough, whap! It hits Jack right in the back of the head, explodes in this cloud of dry sheep dung, and not so dry sheep dung, and he looks up, and he's like, and sees me laughing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you come up with a great idea. Sure, you're going to select a projectile, you're going to judge the wind, and you're going to throw it as hard and far as you can, but at the end, you're not in control of that. And it brings me to my last point, which is all your great ideas will be accidents. Some of you are holding out, you're not sure of that. Trust me, it's true. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Your greatest ideas are going to be accidents. You can get good ones with work, but you can't get the great ones. Now, the question is that good news or bad news? I think it's both. The bad news is that you can't make a great idea happen by working harder. The good news is you can't make a great idea happen by working harder. So just relax. Make your pot of coffee, sit down, put in your time, do your work, go for quantity over quality, and every now and then, a great idea is going to hit you. Right smack dab in the back of the head. Thank you very much. Good night.